Good. Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Jeff Waz, and I'm president of the Colorado Business Roundtable, and thank you for being here. We got a lot of emails, texts, and phone calls yesterday if this was going to happen. I got to tell people, I saw a Facebook post that I really think capsulizes this whole thing. Colorado weather is like driving down the freeway and seeing a state patrol. You go from 60 to 30 in a minute, right? Thank you so much for being here. This is truly an honor to have every one of you here. I think if there was ever a need for flexibility, rolling with the punches, today is really that day. At one point yesterday, literally four of the people that are on the program today were emailing, calling from airports outside of Colorado, letting us know they were not getting back, that the flights were all canceled. We have a few folks, Russell from our title sponsor, TIAA, that was not able to get out. Chancellor Harrell from the CU system that is still trapped, I think, in California and unable to get out till later this evening. And then, of course, we probably should give Chancellor Chop and the DU Pioneers a good luck as they're at the Frozen Four, literally playing tonight. So we've had to roll. Big cheer from our DU crowd at the table over there. That's wonderful. Thank you. So it's been a couple of busy weeks, not only coming up with this event and program, but certainly a busy week in higher ed for Colorado. Both CU and CSU have named new presidents. CSU has named Joyce McConnell from WVU as their new president. I've actually was in communication with Joyce as it relates to this event, and she sends her best wishes. Truly looks forward to settling in Fort Collins and getting to know and work with each and every one of you when she takes over. Just yesterday, the CU Regents, and I know we have a few here from CU, recommended Mark Kennedy from North Dakota and a former congressman to serve as their president as well. So exciting times, no doubt. When you factor in a new governor, a new administration, certainly we're going to hear from Angie, a new director of higher ed that's been on the job for a couple months here. It's easy to see why Colorado and higher ed are flush with certainly opportunities here. Really to start to talk about advancing new partnerships to better align with industry, how we educate tomorrow's leaders in engineering, aerospace, healthcare, financial services, and energy. And we're excited to do this. The Business Roundtable, certainly education and workforce is one of the key pillars that the Business Roundtable is engaged in. For those that wonder what I get to do, probably 20 to 21 hours a day. Immigration, you're going to hear a lot more about that as we revive the Colorado Compact that we're helping lead. USMCA, and I know our friends from Canada are a little interested in that, as well as many businesses. But this is an area that we truly care about. This is the engine that fuels in the talent pipeline that drives the business community and the companies of the Business Roundtable to be able to continue to innovate and compete and stay on that front edge. So it's a great opportunity to be here. Some changes this year from last year. How many of you were actually at our first state of higher ed last year? Raise your hand. So we got a new crowd here. That's wonderful. We're excited to have you here. Our title sponsor this year, TIAA, we thank them, and Angie and her team at the Department of Higher Ed published a report this year, a report of findings that was in each of your seats, and we're excited to have that to really talk a little bit and give you guys a takeaway, which is very different this year, and we wanted to be able to recommend and thank both Angie and your team on all the data and TIAA for that. So please join me giving both of them a big round of applause. We've added, there, is that a little better? There we go. I got applause. Let's do that again. That was great. We've added certainly Joe Garcia and his role with the community college system, the community college voice this year, which I think is such a key component, one of the key tenets of higher ed and where we are. And so it's awesome to have that here. But we also get to honor really a Colorado legend, outgoing President Bruce Benson this year, which is a unique thing to be able to do that. So we're excited. With everything, we do want to make sure we thank our sponsors that have been involved in this. I've referenced TIAA, our title sponsor, a few times there. Thank you for that. Our Canadian Consulate, and you're going to hear from Stefan Lassard, the Consulate General, University of Denver. Go Pios tonight at the Frozen Four. Metropolitan State University of Denver, and we're so honored to have Janine and their team here. University of Colorado, Deloitte, the Colorado Community College System, Alpine Bank, and Apple that's here as well, and our sponsor and serves on our board of directors. So thank you to all our sponsors. Please give them a big round of applause. And I just got outed by Kevin up here that says, I just see what actually happens here. You got to jump up, grab the mic, look great, but it's really Lisa and the team that are doing everything behind the scenes. And the answer is yes, especially with the changes and Denise talking with History Colorado here on the event, and are we open, and food, and everybody involved with the Colorado Business Roundtable. Thank you. So please join me in thanking them. I think it's an awesome job. They did so great in pulling this event off and being flexible. We've got an incredible team here. Make sure you connect with all those involved with the roundtable. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for making this event possible and helping me look like I know what the heck I'm doing up here. So with that, you're here not to hear me, but I can certainly fill a couple hours if you want. No. All right. Thanks, Lisa. Great. Let's bring up Adib. So as I mentioned, Russell was one of those folks that was snowed out yesterday. Adib is actually on maternity leave and stepped off, jumped in because it was so important for him to be here. So it's the newest papa here probably in Colorado, and our title sponsor, Adib Khan. Thank you, Adib.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Not that new, it was March 6th, so I'm a few weeks in, and I'm really lucky to work at TIAA where we have 16 weeks of paid paternity leave. So it's a great time for me to be spending with my family. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'll be here instead of Russell on behalf of TIAA, and I'd like to welcome you all to this special event. When you work for a company like TIAA, you can't help but embody the strong value placed on education. TI's history is closely entwined with the growth and progress of the nation's colleges and universities. We were created over a century ago through the vision of Andrew Carnegie, and it was an answer to a societal problem that he was determined to solve. Carnegie had the highest respect for educators, and it pained him to see that the salaries of college professors during his time was so small that they couldn't save anything for retirement. Many of them spent their final years in poverty. So Carnegie knew that helping them save for a financially secure retirement would make a huge difference in their lives. And it would also enhance the vitality of the American higher education system and in turn the strength of the entire nation. In 1918, his Carnegie Corporation established TIAA as a retirement system for the American higher education system with a clear mission to serve the people whose work makes the world a better place. Today, TIAA is a Fortune 100 company with over $1 trillion in assets under management and one of the highest rated financial institutions. We serve higher ed and the broader not-for-profit community of 5 million individuals and more than 15,000 institutions. But our roots as a retirement provider for the higher education system remain at the core of what we do. TI's roots also reside here in Colorado. Our very first client was Colorado College back in 1919, 100 years ago this year. On top of that, we now provide financial services to over 150,000 Coloradans here in our state. And we work with many of the institutions represented here today. We are honored to call Denver our home for our employees over the past 30 years. Our downtown office is host of 1,500 TIAA employees. This is our second largest office location. And on top of that, our investment and our assets, we have a total of $10 billion in real estate investments and assets right here in Colorado as well. So we're invested in Colorado, and importantly, we are invested in the success of higher education. We are proud to partner with the Colorado Business Roundtable and Jeff and Lisa and the entire group to be able to host this event again this year. We are grateful for the work that they do and bringing us together to have this conversation about the state of higher education. And before we jump into a deeper dive, it's my honor, and I'm proud to be able to take a moment to be able to talk about the incredible person that is CU President Bruce Benson. As many of you know, Bruce announced that he would retire from CU in July as the longest serving CU president in 65 years. CU and TIAA have partnered on retirement security and financial wellness for 95 years. Though Bruce has not been around that entire time, he's been a strong community partner and a thought leader in higher education. Since taking the helm at his alma mater, Bruce has enhanced CU's standing as one of the nation's leading public universities, advancing economy, health, and culture of Colorado and beyond. With the shared commitment to the success of higher education, it's no surprise that under Bruce's leadership, CU has collaborated with TIAA on a number of projects designed to meet the needs of communities in Colorado. TIAA has been grateful for the many opportunities to partner with such an extraordinary leader like Bruce Benson. An honor to introduce him today at this important event. I'd also like to take a second to introduce Kevin Pitts, who will be having a conversation and leading one with Bruce today. Kevin is the publisher of the Denver Business Journal, and he's new to Denver, coming to us from the Charlotte market. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, President Bruce Benson and Kevin Pitts.
Okay, so yeah, I am new to Denver. I've been here for a hot 15 minutes, came from Charlotte. I was a publisher there for the past 10 years, and I've been with our parent company for the past 19 years. The one thing that I've learned after being in 4 cities is the importance of academic resources and being an economic engine in the regions I've been in. So when Jeff was kind enough to invite me to sit down with Bruce, I jumped at the chance. It is an honor. And the only complaint I have is I have 10 minutes. So I'm in a deadline business. I know how to keep to a timeline. So I'm going to jump right in. As I said, you know, regional competitiveness really is tied to academic resources being aligned with occupational needs. So in your view, Bruce, you know, is Colorado aligned?
Occupational with academic? Well, I think there's a lot of alignment. We've done a lot of projects. One, I'm just going to, do one other thing. Chairman of our board of Regents, Sue Sharkey, is here. Sue? I think you're the only regent, right? Okay. Got your protocol. I think there is a lot of alignment. There's certainly more alignment that we could have. And we've done a lot of things with a lot of industries. I think about a couple of the programs we've done years ago. Before I started at CU, I took the dean of the business school, Sue Ann Ambron, down from the Denver campus to an oil club because she wanted to get to know the oil guys. And next thing I knew, we had Global Energy Management, which has been a great program down here on the Denver campus. So we do things like that. We look at other things like the Commodity Trading Center, which that's just about all of it is private money. And again, that is people like Encana stepping up to the plate, CoBank and other people like that. And it is one of the finest in the United States, if not the finest in the United States. So the more that we can do, collaborate with the business community, the better off we are.
So what are some key industry and academic partnerships that come to mind that have really been able to move the region forward?
Well, I'd say those two I just mentioned are very important. But the other thing we're doing, people like to ask me all the time, you're going to take over these smaller schools. I say, no, that's not what we need to do. We need to help the smaller schools. So somewhere about the time I started, we made a deal with Mesa over in Grand Junction to put in engineering. And the way that works is you've got the first 2 years, they deliver to their faculty over there, and then we embed engineers over there to finish up the last 2 years. 1 year, the highest grade point average in the whole engineering class was a Mesa student beating out the Boulder students. So it's an interesting approach. But we started that and got it going, and it's working well. And I was having lunch, I guess it may be going on a year ago, with a friend of mine from Western, who we put on the board when I did the Bill Owens rearrangement of governing boards years ago. And Paul said, we're going to put engineering in at Western. And I said, how? And he started talking. I said, why don't you do what we're doing over at Mesa? And he said, well, what's that? And I went through it, and I just told you guys what it was. And by the way, when you get done with the program, you end up with a CU degree, and you don't have to wait years to go through accreditation because it's already accredited through us. So that program is up and running. And Paul was nice enough to put up all the money to make it happen, and it's a lot of money. So these are things that can save a school like Western by getting these new programs in. And by the way, we've now expanded Mesa, so I think we've got civil, mechanical, electrical, and computer science over at Mesa, so that we have more things going on over there with them to help those schools. We're also talking to other schools that we can do some things with the smaller schools. I'm not going to go into it because it's all in the planning stages right now. But these are the things we can do to make Colorado a better place and reach across the state.
Thank you. I know we were talking about research funding earlier when we were, I think, starting to get into the buffet line over there. And it's been really impressive what you've done in your tenure with funding reaching record highs. And I think you shared it went from about $660 million to $1 billion. So what are the intended and unintended consequences of that when it comes to the commercialization of technology and research?
I don't worry about unintended. I mean, we have very, very specific things we're doing, where we're doing real research for a lot of things, whether it's going into space or doing, I mean, we've still got a satellite at Mars, MAVEN project, that's studying the climate of Mars. One I really like is our other one from Boulder, and that is the mission to Pluto. And our graduate students, probably, I don't know, 15 years or so ago, said, you know, we need to go to Pluto. They put the plan together and said, this is how we got to go to Pluto. And went back to, one of them went back to Washington at least, and said, here's the program we want to do. Let's go to Pluto. Well, guess what? 15 years later, we're there. He's the lead investigator on the project. So, you know what, it really blows me away. If you want to tell that satellite what to do it 4.5 hours before you want it to happen. I mean, it's just the time differences are so immense. And then we've got another one that's up there, and it's out outer space someplace. And this stuff with solar panels, they can go on forever and ever. So it's fascinating stuff. And you think about it, all the communications today, why is it? Because we've got satellites up there. So these are the things we're doing. We're expanding our whole space program, building a new building at Boulder right now. I think we've got something over 6,000 engineering students right now. When we get that space building open, we'll have about another third. So it'll be about 8,000 or so engineering students on the Boulder campus. But it truly is a world-class place. So there's just a couple of things that are really important. Well, I ought to just say, let's not forget Anschutz. Stuff that goes out there is just amazing. And, you know, we have a professor that created a bionic eye for a blind person. These are things that go on that nobody even ever thinks about are happening in this state or country.
Thank you. Yes, so many things came from the space program, and I'll admit I'm a fan. My father was in the space program. We were talking about this earlier. You know, when he was at Cape Canaveral, to Robert Goddard, to RCA Astro, and he always reminds me of all of the great things that bubbled out of the space program.
Did you read about black holes in the paper this morning?
Only positive news. I
No,
focus on
but this is positive. I mean, the fact that we're out there light years away, and you got 4 or 5 cameras all zeroed in on this thing, and then they composite. It's front page of the Wall Street Journal. It's pretty interesting.
Well, I guess that is positive news. Okay, so moving on. We've got
We didn't do it.
next time. You can't win them all. So, see, you made a significant change to join the Pac-12. So, what are the implications of that?
Well, it's very interesting because I'm a CU graduate, and you know, we grew up in the Big 8, the Big 12, and you know, at first we said, "Gee, should we do this?" Well, you look into it, and you really start thinking about it, and you look at the alumni base, and in the Big 12 alumni base outside of Colorado, we've got about, I think it's 11,000 alums. You go to the Pac-12 or Pac-10 at the time, and what do we have? 55,000 alums. How many do we have in California? Over 30,000. So just start with that. You know, just imagine, would you rather go to San Francisco or Tucson or Phoenix or LA or Ames, Iowa, or Manhattan, Kansas? You know, nothing against those, are wonderful places. But the point is, people want to go to these places. So where do we have all these alums and all these friends? What about recruiting football players and students? You know, you look at kid that's a great star in high school in LA. He's going to parents can watch 2 games out there every year because they're going to play 2 teams in that area. So these are the things that I think really help compel you. But you know what's really important, and our first Nobel laureate, Tom Cech, called me. I was out of town. He said, I got to tell you why you got to go in the Pac-12. I said, Tom, I know why. And he said, I'm going to tell you anyway. But you're a Nobel laureate, you can get away with that. And so he did, and I said, no, Tom, I totally understand that. And he was talking about research partners. So who are our research partners? I think at MAVEN, I believe Berkeley's a junior partner. I can't remember them all now. Washington often is a partner of ours. UCLA, SC, Stanford, all of these people are our partners in research. So I think it's really important tying all that together. So it's a great move. We're doing well in our athletic teams, with the exception of, and I had lunch with our AD yesterday, and I told Rick, I said, one of the reasons I'm kind of sorry to be leaving is because I think you're going to have one hell of a football team next year, and also one hell of a basketball team, because all the basketball players are returning, and we got a new coach who is the real deal, and I think it's going to be wonderful. So I'm going to miss that, but I think we're on the right track with athletics, and I think athletics are really important. So it's great to be in the Pac-12. It's great people that you work with. So I think that covers.
That's all good. Well, I think I'm at 2-minute warning now, so I've just got 2 quick questions that I want to get in. So, big announcement this week. Finalist for Bruce's successor was announced, and what advice would you give to him passing the torch with all that you've learned, and knowing that this is an industry that's certainly going to change dramatically over the next couple of decades?
Well, I'm going to start with the fact that he's coming from a small school, 14,000 students. He's had less than 3 years in presidency there, but he's also been in the business, and he's been an elected congressman, so he's got a lot of various experience, which is really important. But the first thing I'd ever tell anybody is come in and take a look at our staff, because this is a very, very complicated place. If I told you 3 of my projects right now I'm trying to solve before I leave, I'm not going to tell you. But they're very complicated, and they have not a lot to do with how you teach English, math, or science. So you've got to look at this. And we've got a very experienced staff that's taken quite a bit of time to accumulate these people and get them on board. But they know their way around. They can keep you out of trouble. So that's the first thing I would tell them, because I think that is critical. Second thing I'll tell them is take a look at what we're doing. We've done so many things around this state, and think about it. And I think about what, Michelle McKinney has done with the CU advocates, which were, and we have some of the advocates in the room. How many advocates do we have here? Come on, you guys, got to have more. All right, well, what we've done, and we have no marketing program at all, and we started that program. We got 4,600 people that are out there beating on the drum for CU, volunteers. So that's really important. Then we did CU for Colorado. I thought we'd find 30 or 40 programs. We didn't. We found 291. Then we started adding in the clinics and all. So we're up over 800. Now we have an interactive map. If you're a legislator, you can punch your district, and it'll show you how many alums you have from CU. Are they living there? What's going on? How many students? And you can go a lot farther and find out what programs and what they do in your district or a county or whatever else you want. So we're continuing to do that, to have a presence in all over Colorado. I think it is critically important that people know we're not just Boulder, we're not just Front Range, we're all over this state. So I'm going to continue to push that kind of thing toward him. And there's a lot of new stuff that we've got to be working on, but we aren't going to have time to talk about it. But it's an amazing place. And I'll tell you one other thing I'm going to tell them. Diversity of thought is huge on my list. This is really important. If you go back 100 years ago, you'll find faculty ratios were 1-to-1 liberal conservative. They got about 5-to-1 liberal conservative in the 50s. And then now we're probably 10-to-1 or better. You've got to get a balance back in. We put in a very, very serious program. We probably raised about $25 million for it. We bring in conservative scholars, and I mean scholars, not crazy people, who come in every year. Well, there are a lot of crazy people on both sides of the aisle, so let's be clear. And they come in and teach a year. They teach a full load. They mentor our students. They give speeches around the state, and they get all points of view out there. And as I always say, is let's teach our kids how to think and not what to think, because that is what we're all about in education. So anyway, those are some of the things.
Well said. So, Jeff, I know. I usually have a half an hour to an hour to do this, but I have one. He's going to pull me off the stage in a minute. I have one last quick question. We just met today, but you certainly don't strike me as someone who's going to slow down and into retirement. So, what does this next chapter of your life look like?
Well, I've never been one to plan. I planned to start an oil company when I left CU and started in 1965. Other than that, that's all I ever planned, and we've had You know, at one point we had 46 Pizza Huts in Nebraska, and so you had to cheer for Nebraska if you're playing football because sales went up if they won, went down if they lost. So there's the kinds of things. We have banks, we've done all kinds of stuff. I never planned any of that. Just whatever comes naturally. I can absolutely assure you, I never planned to be sitting in this chair today. But this is just what happens. And there's always opportunities to come along. Some of my buddies have said, oh, good, you're going to be back and doing deals again. Well, maybe. We'll see. I still have an oil company. I've still got an office I've been paying rent on for the last 11 years. And we've got a small staff over there. And we're mostly royalties and overrides and non-operated. There's very little operations left. So he's going to pull us both off the stage. But anyway, so what are we going to do? I don't know, but we'll stay busy. And Marcy, of course, has been so active. She's on the White House Fellows for both Reagan and Bush, and she's done so much. And I could tell you, when she went to Washington, she went for a summer job, and she stayed 19 years. So she is very accomplished. I'm very fortunate to have her as a spouse. And I know we're going to shut down right now. Thank you all.
Thank you. We're shutting down because we want to take a second to honor you, not only for your leadership, your service, your commitment, but carrying the flag for Colorado. You've been an incredible ambassador, incredible leader and president here at CU, so we'd like to present this to you.
Thank you so much.
Please join me in thanking Bruce Benson. Well, speaking of crazy people, it's my honor to bring up my friend, Stefan Lassard. No, I'm just kidding. It's really my pleasure to bring up a partner, a friend, a sponsor of this event, and truly an incredible ambassador for Canada, and somebody, of course, on numerous things. We worked very closely with Country of Origin, which I had no idea what that was, but when you start talking about things you get to do in this job, and now certainly with the USMCA, Stefan has been a great ambassador for Canada, a great Consulate General. Honored to have you here at the event. Stefan Lassard.
Thanks very much, Jeff. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm accompanied also by a colleague, Audrey, right there, Audrey Ordonez from our office. And it's a pleasure to be here, not only because we look for any reason to partner with the Business Roundtable, but also because this is a topic that actually matters a lot to Canada. One thing I've found in the last 2.5 years being here is a rule of thumb. It's pretty safe that any issue, a challenge or an opportunity that Colorado faces, chances are we have the same issue at some level in Canada. Whether it's rural issues about health, or whether it's education, like in this case, or whether it's some other matter, economic or environmental or energy, we settle this place together, we defend it together, and we deal with very similar issues. It's great to see so many good partners of our office in this room. And with respect to higher education, I did a bit of digging in preparation, and sure enough, we are asking ourselves the same questions that we see you guys are asking yourselves. We see tremendous leadership in Canada, but also here, following similar tracks. And I think it's a subject that is very rich in opportunities for further discussion. It's not going to be today, but we are asking similar questions of ourselves. For example, recognizing that a 4-year college degree or university degree, it may not be for everybody, and maybe that we've oversold that to our kids over time, some of our kids anyway. What's the appropriate path of getting kids to the right place where they're going to thrive and be happy? And maybe that brings in the question of apprenticeships and so on and so forth, which I'm sure you'll discuss. But it's one of those things where we also have some experience in that, and are happy to share if necessary. For those who do seek higher education, the kids, what's the best way for them to get the education they need of high quality without being saddled by unmanageable debt and the tuition issues and so on. So these are questions that are really important, and they never go away, and the answers change. But that debate is going on in Canada. How do we maintain tuition that's affordable? What's the role of the public sector, the governments, in enabling tuition to be affordable? In Canada, there's a sense that we subsidize higher education to a higher degree, perhaps, than some of American institutional education institutions. So, but what's the right level? And it's a matter of taxation, of course. And maybe lastly, how do we make sure that students in rural areas, who may be often indigenous in background, but folks in the smaller communities out there, in a large country like both of our countries, but in our country, if you're remote, you could be past the Arctic Circle. How do we guarantee a reasonable level of equity in access to quality education to all of our populations, comparable to what students may find in the bigger cities? So as you can see, the questions are similar. Sometimes the answers will be a little different. Last year with the Business Roundtable, we had a great event on the future of work, and we're certainly game always to create these opportunities. So that's just a parallel to what some of the things and the thinking going on in Canada. And now it's my privilege to introduce a really important expert in Colorado, Dr. Angie Paccione. Dr. Paccione was appointed Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Higher Education by Governor Polis. And Dr. Paccione, you assumed your role on January 10th, 2019, unanimously confirmed by the Senate Education Committee on the 17th. Dr. Paccione has more than 20 years of experience in secondary and post-secondary education. She was a high school teacher, a coach, an administrator at Smoky Hill High School in the Cherry Creek School District before earning a PhD, no less, in Education and Human Resources Studies from Colorado State University. Dr. Paccione left higher education to pursue public service and was elected to 2 terms in the Colorado House of Representatives. And she served on the Business Affairs Committee during all 4 years in the legislature, helping guide the business environment for the state of Colorado. In 2006, she ran for the U.S. Congress and came within within 2.5% of unseating the incumbent. No small feat there. From 2017 to her appointment as Executive Director, Dr. Paccione worked for Virus Global, where she specialized in the areas of leadership development, diversity and inclusion, talent development, and change management. Dr. Paccione has also co-authored 2 books on leadership. And with that, I give you Dr. Paccione.
Thank you so much. Who's been to Canada? Raise your hand if you've been to Canada. All right. Who's liked it? Same amount. So we love you. I have as well many times, and so I'm happy to be with you today, and want to give you a little bit of context around the state of higher education, both in Colorado, but also a little bit around what some of the national statistics also show us. And so thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here. I did some stuff when the Colorado Business Roundtable had first begun with Gail, was it? Gail, what's his last name? Denninger. He's not here, is he? Okay. He's in Canada. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. I am excited to be the new ED for the department. Of course, we have probably 4 or 5 EDs from the department since there's been so many in the last 5 or 6 years. So there's probably a few. Certainly, Joe Garcia is here, and he sat in that seat as well. I'm happy to be there. I've told my team, some of my team is sitting at that table over there, who are fantastic, by the way, but I did tell them that I would commit, God willing and Polis willing, to at least the 4-year term that he has, and we'll see what happens if he gets reelected. So you may be seeing me at a few more events, if that's okay with you. So let's take a look at some of the context. And where am I pointing? There we go. So, of course, as the ED of the department, we work with the Colorado Commission on Higher Education. These are the commissioners, and to help set the policy for higher education in the state of Colorado. You may see some familiar faces in this list up here. And what are the benefits of a degree? Why do we even want our students to leave high school and go on to higher education? Here are some individual benefits and also some of the public good, if you will, some of the benefits to the public. I'm not going to go through all of those. You can all read because you probably all graduated, right? So, yeah. So I'm sure you can. So these are some of the benefits. Why do we even want higher education? Right now we have more than 405,000 students enrolled. We have 13 four-year institutions, 15 two-years, technical colleges, private occupational schools, and over 100 private institutions and seminaries. That's a lot of people right here in the state who are engaged in post-secondary education. That's a lot of, I didn't know that when I took the job. I was just thinking of the 13 and the 15, and all of a sudden I got the 350, and yeah, so there's a lot. And I've been doing site visits and getting a chance to meet some of these folks, including our private occupational schools, most of whom are cosmetology or massage therapy. There's so many. So we have an investment. The state has an investment, and our people, our citizens have an investment in post-secondary education, as you can see from these numbers. What are the priorities? These are 3 of the priorities that the state has for higher education. Of course, preparing Coloradans for the jobs of the future. We don't even know what those jobs will be like. Closing the equity gaps. We'll take a look at what those gaps are. They're very stark and unsustainable, really, for the state. And then also containing costs. So higher education, as was said, has continued to increase its cost at the same time that the state has reduced its funding. So those 2 things really create some conditions that might also be unsustainable as we go forward. So containing costs, but also advancing affordability for our students. Right now, what you have told us is that 74% of the jobs of the future will require some education beyond high school. Nearly 3/4 of all of the jobs will require some kind of a post-secondary credential certificate. So we have to make sure that we're reaching that number. Right now, our kind of a short-term goal is 66%. So it's 66% by 2025 on the way to that 74 number. So right now, we're at about 56.9% of Coloradans aged 25 to 34. Or is it 24 to 35? Brandon? 24 to 35, thank you, my team. Whew. So 24 to 35 right now is about 52.9%, and we're trying to get to 66 by 2025. That's pretty ambitious, but ultimately we have to get to 74. These are our 4 strategic goals in the master plan for higher education that the institutions have also signed on to, and so all of the institutions, we are trying to get to these goals, and we have also shared these goals with those private institutions and even with the occupational schools. Say, as you are preparing people to be a massage therapist or to be a cosmetologist, how are we also closing those equity gaps? And who's getting those credentials as well? So we've shared these with those institutions as well. The equity gaps. It's hard to see these numbers at the bottom, but remember that number of 74%, which is going to be necessary, 52.9% right now is our current attainment level, and American Indian Native, Alaska Natives are about at 33% right now. 33%. We have to get that demographic up to 74%. African American Black students, about 40%. Huge gap. Hispanic and Latinx, about 28.6. So this is huge for the state of Colorado. As we go forward, we can't leave anyone behind, certainly in terms of these demographics for the whole state and the economic development of our state. So this is a huge focus of our department, and a huge focus of our institutions of higher education to close this equity gap. Where do we stand in terms of our peers? Right now, we are, if we look at the top 10 in terms of our peer, in terms of who they are also educating, we're number 10 in terms of appropriations per FTE. Nationally, we're at 47. Actually, I think it might be 48 in the most recent SHIO, right? Yeah. See, I'm on top of it. It's not good that we dropped even from 47 to 48. So we are not funding higher education the way other states are. We've got work to do. This is the way the cost has gone in the share from the state. Just in 2000, the state was contributing about 68% and the student about 32%. And you see the way those numbers have gone. Now it's flipped, almost exactly flipped. So the state is only contributing about a third, and the student and his or her family has to pick up 2/3. So we're putting a burden. Right? Even though it's a shared responsibility, we see that the burden has really flipped. What's working? What are we doing? There are some state initiatives that are working. We are expanding access to concurrent enrollment, where students who are in high school can take classes and count for credit in high school. We have a student who came to testify for that bill recently, a DU student, by the way, who did 2 years of concurrent enrollment while he was in high school. He entered DU essentially as a junior. And so he will, when his class graduates, he'll be graduating with a master's degree, and they'll be graduating with a bachelor's. That saved him 2 years of the cost of DU, kind of expensive. So saved him 2 years of that cost, but also accelerated his development. So his confidence, his ability to actually enter that job market. He's also doing some apprenticeship work with, I think with Wells Fargo. And so he's getting lots of experiences and he's getting credit. We're engaging communities through COSI. There's some folks here who are fans of COSI and the work that it does with providing scholarships and providing support for students all around the state. Improving transparency, accountability. We have an ROI report coming out. What is the return on the investment of higher education? We have a report coming out, I believe, in July this year. We'll have that first ROI report. And of course, grants and research. We're doing everything we can at the state level. And then the institutions are doing plenty of things. Right? So there are projects for the equity gap, open educational resources, putting some of those textbooks, making them digital so students don't have to buy. You know the textbook costs so much, right? Anyone have kids in college? Raise your hand, kids in college. Yeah, so you know, those textbook costs. So if we can use some open educational resources, put those textbooks online, so the students don't have to buy a textbook that they have to buy again the next year or the next year. Wraparound services are essential. You'll probably hear our Chancellor Garcia talk about, and I love the way he talks about, that colleges have to also be student ready. Right, so students have to be college ready, but we also need the colleges to be student ready. And this is one of the ways. They have to have those wraparound services for students. We have seamless transfer. Here's my little jingle. If you graduate, if you have a 2.5 and no C, then your transfer is guaranteed. I don't think it's going to stick, but but if you have a 2.5 coming out of community college and you haven't had a C, then you have an automatic transfer to our four-year institutions, except for mines and a little bit of thing about CU, your maps. But for the most part, 2.5 and no C, your transfer is guaranteed. Just like that. Okay, thank you. So we're trying to find ways to help accelerate students through the pipeline and get them that degree and that credential so that they can contribute to our economy. So master plan, you can find it right here. Master plan, higher ed. Colorado.gov. I think that was the last slide. So I wanted to put some of that into context and say, here's where we are right now. When we are on the panel, you'll hear more specifics about some of the institutions who will be represented on the panel. But we are determined, we are driven, we are strategic in trying to make sure that students, when we talk about access and affordability and completion, that we are doing and raising those numbers up. So I think higher ed, I feel like it's in good hands with my staff. I just do this part, but they do the work. No, just kidding. But with the leaders that we have in higher ed, I think we're on a good path, and we're going to get where we need to be. So thank you.
Angie, I think your jingle is going to stick, but we need a little background there. No? All right. Multifaceted up here. We can roll. Speaking of rolling, it was I had the honor of having Karen that was going to be doing the introduction of our panelist and moderator today, but with Chancellor Harrell stepping out, we've tasked Karen to serve on the panel representing the CSU system and CSU Global. So I'll be doing some very quick introductions. We just heard an introduction of Angie. So Angie, all I will say is, as a pretend quasi not so great athlete, I think you would have made me a better athlete, and I could have been in the Nuggets playing tonight in the playoffs or something. So Angie, phenomenal job. Thank you for being such an incredible resource. Welcome to your role, and we look forward to having you on there. Also, Joe Garcia, as you heard, who served in that seat formerly. Joe Garcia serves as Chancellor of the Community College System, has also served as President of the CSU Global, as our Lieutenant Governor, and certainly somebody that we've had speak at several different events, including Western Pathways, and brings a breadth of experience and talks about so many things, and we're honored to have Joe here. Janine Davidson, the 8th president of MSU Denver. Janine served as a 32nd Undersecretary of the United States Navy, and I'm telling you what, that resume that you have, to throw that out there is still the best resume I've read. Jay Lindell, with calling himself the aerospace cheerleader and champion, thinks he's got a better title and resume, but I don't know. That may be tough there. Previously taught at Georgetown, George Mason, and Davidson on security issues. And of course, Karen Ferguson, who I mentioned that was going to be doing this job up here, that I stepped into as the Provost and VP of Strategic Development at CSU Global Campus. Prior to joining Global, she held faculty and administrative priorities at several non-traditional higher ed institutions, so we're honored to have that panel. Before we bring our panel up to the stage, it's my pleasure also to introduce our moderator today, Debbie Hughes. Debbie is a senior strategist and head of the Talent and Workforce Solutions at Entangled, and also a moderator previously, who we're honored to get here and was experiencing some of those travel delays and got in about 12-something this morning. So thank you. Please join me in welcoming Deb Hughes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm going to make some opening remarks and then ask the panel to join me up on the stage. All across the United States, higher education is under the microscope for defining, measuring, articulating what the value these institutions bring, what market-ready skills students have, and why, quite frankly, parents, students, learners continue to go into debt to graduate with a 4-year degree. Business leaders and CEOs like Ginny Rometty at IBM, Jamie Dimon at JPMC, and many others have led from their pulpit many of these questions, challenging business leaders across the nation to examining their own hiring practices and start to question why hiring, recruiting, signals from their businesses are unilaterally asking for degrees and credentials that have not necessarily been mapped to the skills their jobs are asking for and qualifications they need. And yet, it is abundantly clear that opportunity gaps exist. We just heard from them, and are growing. During the recession, the population that was first to be let go and last to be rehired were the ones with no college credentials. We are living in an extremely tight labor market where employers are looking for talent anywhere they can find it and hiring in non-traditional places. What will happen when the markets loosen once again? In addition, companies large and small are all facing a digital transformation and undergoing one in real time. We hear a lot about the topics of future of work and automation and augmentation, forcing companies to rethink their role and relationship between training, education, new hires, and lifelong learning. In a survey conducted by the Business Roundtable in 2016, only 5% of CEOs said that skills gaps were not an issue. 95% of CEOs currently think that it's a significant issue. In research I conducted with Burning Glass, a labor market analytics firm, and PwC, we found that explosive growth across all sectors in the United States was not for data scientists, those deep expertise, but for those workers with baseline industry-recognized credentials in data analytics, and these individuals known as data-driven decision makers, with a mixing of skills led to an exploration of new foundational skills for the digital economy. And what we found with the new report is that there's a core set of skills that are going to be required for all students and workers. And 14 essential skills that we found for this new digital professional include digital building blocks, business enablers, and 21st century skills, or skills that sometimes are referred to as soft skills. This tied to a person's domain expertise is really making us rethink that remixing of what foundational skills are needed. And yet the 21st century skills are leading to adaptive, creative workers that our four-year institutions have hung their hats on, their graduates being able to learn and evolve for colleges and for careers for their life. Research shows that these skills are the least tied to specific job titles, and yet the most tied to advancement in careers. And the digital skills are the most dynamic and rapidly changing, but closest link to getting a job. Coming back to Colorado and the four leaders that we have on our panel today, Colorado has become an exemplar for state, as a state around education, training, lifelong learning. It's well known. Programs like Skillful, connecting talent and employers, career-wise on apprenticeships, the workforce development and sector work that's been led through NGA. Yet the state remains, as we just heard, 48th out of 50th when it comes to state support for higher ed. Further, many of the highest profile initiatives across the state involve the 2 years, where the 4 years have oftentimes been left out of the spotlight. Last year, I moderated this panel with the goal of sharing with the business community kind of the best of Colorado institutions, combating many of the misnomers that higher ed is not listening, responsive, or willing to partner to ensure graduates have the skills they need for Colorado's growing economy. This year, 1 year later, my goal for this session is to really hear how institutions are aligning, making progress, facing hurdles, as well as opportunities to be more engaged in the education ecosystem. How and where do Colorado's 2 and 4 year institutions stand out as national exemplars, and how can the business community sitting in this room and across the state serve as accelerators and better partners? My background, as Jeff mentioned, has been in serving as a convener, coalition builder, and translator, understanding the collective needs of business for the digital economy, using that demand-side approach to talent and site change across education institutions, education intermediaries and states, and encouraging businesses to look inward to how they systemically change their own talent practices and partner more effectively across the entire education spectrum. So with that, I'd like to invite my panelists to the stage. Hello. All right, jumping into the panel, we just heard from Angie in the report. I'd love to hear from each of our panelists, spending maybe 3 or so minutes to introduce your institution and frame your institution a little bit in the context of the report and what you just heard. Karen, starting with maybe you.
Sure, thank you. It's working. Okay. CSU Global is a 100% online university. We are housed within the CSU system. Created about 10 years ago to specifically serve the needs of non-traditional and adult learners. We started 10 years ago. We've graduated about 18,000 students to date. About 60% of those are Colorado residents. We have 20,000 active students. Some of the things that make us a little bit unique as you think about the data that was shared earlier is our flexibility and our access. We have classes that start every single month. They're in 8-week terms. Students can come in and out as they feel fits their schedule with their work, their professional, and their academic goals. And since our focus really is about access to higher education that leads to workplace success, cost is extremely important to us. So we've maintained tuition rates at $350 for an undergrad and $500 for grad for over 8 years. And we put students on a tuition guarantee, so they're at their same tuition all the way through. We've also spent the last 2 years focusing on open educational resources and digital textbooks. We just completed our analysis about a month ago, and those changes alone save across the university about $6 million a year. When we break that down to the individual students, where we see the biggest difference, the students can go through our entire general education curriculum for $30. And when we look at the graduate level, our students save on average $2,100 in textbook costs through a graduate program. So we're continuing to work on that. I would say we're about 75% to where we'd like to be with that as we continue to evaluate those resources every time we change our curriculum to make sure we're maintaining that level of access. Students still have the same quality educational opportunity and the quality resources, but when we can bring them in at a lower cost, it's very important to us. Secondly, we focus very heavily on return on investment. You heard Angie talk about that a little bit earlier today. We pay very close attention to our student learning outcomes, our assessment, our alumni data. Where are they working? We measure salary. You know, our students make on average much more than the national average 1 year after graduation. We've worked with MC to evaluate our economic impact. So one thing that we know about CSU Global students is they have a 4 to 1. So every dollar that they spend on tuition, they get a $4 return within 1 year of graduation, and within 10 years, it's a 15% return. So we measure that data. We work closely with workforce. We want to make sure we're aligned with industry, that our students are able to make an impact at work as soon as they get to work. Most of them are already working. And then lastly, to the soft skills. We've worked very hard over the last year with Burning Glass and Burning Glass data to map those foundational skills, those baseline skills, and those new digital skills throughout our entire general education curriculum, so students understand what they're learning beyond perhaps dates in a history class. They're learning critical thinking, pattern recognition, written communication, so they can take those and communicate those back to their employers as soon as they finish those classes.
Thank you so much, Janine. Thank you. Well, thanks for hosting us again. I can't believe it's already been a year. And to TIAA, thank you for sponsoring, and I'm a little disappointed that Russell couldn't make it today because I would like to let everybody know he just was confirmed as one of our trustees. Russell Knowles is an proud MSU alumnus as well. So yeah, we're very, very proud and happy to have him on the board, and sorry that he missed it today. Hopefully someplace warm. So I, talk a little bit about MSU Denver in the context of the report, which is really interesting stuff. A lot also on the lines of some of the data that Angie presented. There's something going on here, right? I mean, 4 years, we have a years to graduate is only 34.5% of students are graduating in 4 years. Well, the whole thing, the whole point that we're measuring that is a reflection of, I think, what is maybe, unfortunately, becoming an outdated model for higher ed. I will tell you that at MSU Denver, 80% of our students work full-time or part-time, and across the country, 70% of students are working at least 30 hours a week, right? So this model, this fabled 4-year model that many of us had probably enjoyed, or some of you are actually probably paying for your kids to do, that's for the top 20% of Americans. And MSU Denver exists for everybody else, right? And the majority of higher ed does as well. I think we really, as policymakers, as business leaders, and parents even, we need to get our head into the real data. And so when we talk about debt, and we talk about years to graduate, what we're trying to do at MSU Denver is really change that narrative. We know that having a sense of belonging is a really important thing for retention and graduation. So 50% of our students are first in their families ever to go to college. They've already got this mood music in their head that says, maybe I don't belong here. And then you tag on this fabled 4-year model and you ask them, what year are you? What's your major? What year are you? And they're like, well, I guess I've got, nobody takes 15 credit hours a semester and works 40 hours a week. It's just a fantasy. And as long as we're going to continue to have that steady disinvestment in higher education that Angie put up there, as long as 65 to 70% of the cost for public higher education is going to fall on the student, we need to create the pathways for them that work instead of trying to cram them into that 4-year pathway. And it's kind of an uncomfortable reality. But I'll tell you, what we're trying to do is
be able to bring students in and meet them where they are, instead of saying, this is higher ed and you need to cram that square peg into this round hole. We're going to say to them, so you're working 40 hours a week, you don't want to take out these loans, or what's a reasonable amount of debt? We still don't know what that means around, we're the higher ed professionals. What is a reasonable amount of debt? 0 would be great, but is that realistic, right? And what is a reasonable workload? If 15 to finish is unreasonable, what is reasonable? I mean, at MSU Denver, it turns out when you reverse engineer the numbers, well, actually, if you go online and ask Mr. Google what MSU Denver's graduation rate is, it will come up to something like 24%. Because all they measure is first-time, full-time freshmen. 56% of our students are transfer students. We have about 15,000 full-time students, about 20,000 students on our campus. And I shake 3,500 hands a year. So it's not a 25% graduation rate. It's just, if all you're going to measure and all you're going to care about and all you're going to think about is that 4-year fabled model, then you're really, really missing out on all these other unique and creative things that can be done, like what you're just talking about. Meeting students where they are and changing your structures and your processes and your mindset to get students to a new place. That's the essence of the American dream, the so-called American dream, which, oh, by the way, Stefan, we had a group of our student affairs folks went up to visit University of Waterloo in Toronto, I believe, to check out your co-op program to see how you're doing this. Because as it turns out, ladies and gentlemen, according to the Social Mobility Index work done by Raj Shetty and those folks, you're twice as likely to achieve the American dream in Canada today. That's not cool. I'm not cool with that, right? I'm not cool with that. So we as higher ed leaders, I think, need to turn that around. And so I'm just going to sort of plant that. That is the main thing we're trying to do at MSU Denver. We're trying to partner with industry, businesses, employers of all types, nonprofits, small businesses. A little harder to partner with some of the small businesses. They're just darn busy. Because we know that if we get the engagement with the businesses to the left of the graduation timeline, then the whole experiential learning model blurs and is actually a lot more of a rich experience. As my employer friends say, we get to try before we buy if we have an internship or apprenticeship or a co-op, and the students get to do the same thing. You're exponentially more likely to graduate, move on, and get it. And less debt means longer, not shorter, which is counterintuitive. Then that's what we have to be thinking about doing it. And I look forward to partnering with all the business leaders in this room to make that happen. Thank you so much.
Thanks. A couple of quick facts about the Colorado Community College system that many of you may not be aware of. First, we're the largest, we enroll more undergraduate students than any other system in the state. We enroll about 138,000 students here in Colorado every year at our 13 community colleges. And they range in size. We have like Front Range Community College, President Andy Dorsey is back here, serves over 20,000 students. But we also have schools in places like Lamar and Craig and Rangeley that serve fewer than 1,000 students. And we need to do all of that economically because we are economic engines in each of those communities. Now we also serve, and many of you may not be aware of this, over 100,000 high school students every year. 100,000 high school students who are enrolled in our career and tech ed programs. And we know that career and technical education is something that's really on the lips of a lot of employers right now. They want us to help address those skills gaps. That's how we do it. But we also serve another roughly 25,000 high school students with concurrent enrollment programs. It is allowing students to get high school credit, both credit for high school graduation and college credit while they're still in high school. So we have many, many more students every year graduating from high school with associate's degrees. I met a young woman this week who was graduating with 3 associate's degrees the week before she earned her high school diploma, and at no cost to her. Those are the kinds of things we need to do. But we also need to recognize that we need to evaluate our success based on what our students come to us for. Right now we try to reward, and it's important, student completion. That's something we have not focused on enough, and too many students come to our institutions, whether it's community colleges or CU, and they leave without a degree, they leave without a credential. That's where the real debt crisis is. It's not so much a function of how much things cost, or how much debt you take on. It's really a function of whether you graduate and are in a better position to pay it back. So we all hear those stories about somebody who graduates with $100,000 in debt and is working at Starbucks. Well, those are the real outliers. The people we really ought to be concerned about are those students who leave with $10,000 in debt but no degree. There are far too many of those students in our state and from all of our institutions. Students who start and for various reasons don't finish. That's why I think we need to emphasize student support services at our institutions. Our institutions should not, as they have historically, serve as a filter, but as a ladder. We don't want to weed people out. We want to help all of our students succeed so that they can contribute back both in the workforce and what they do civically in our communities. Higher ed should not be looked at as a select and sort system. And that's, again, historically what we've been. If we want Metro State, if we want community colleges, if we want App State, frankly, if we want our state to be successful, we need to make sure that we're providing more opportunities for the students who enroll to be successful. We do have to close those equity gaps. The equity gaps between our Hispanic and our Anglo population is huge. We cannot ever get to that 74% workforce need, or even the 66% goal, if we graduate every single white high school graduate in this state. We can't get there. We have to do a better job, with students from our minority communities. And right now the good news is they are enrolling at a faster rate. The enrollment growth among our communities, our minority communities, is tremendous, but the completion rate is not. It really has not grown appreciably, and that's where we really need to be working harder, and that requires more partnership among our institutions. So let me close with this. It's really about bridges, not walls. We think of that in other contexts, but think about it in terms of education. In the past, we separated secondary from post-secondary, 2-year from 4-year, higher ed from the workplace. Most of our students have, a foot in more than one of those worlds. How do we help them make those transitions instead of creating barriers at each of those transition points? That's what our shared obligation needs to be.
Thank you, and I think that's a perfect segue to Angie, because we just asked you to present all this data, but we didn't ask you what your vision is for the role that you're playing. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about, you just joined in the role in January, and love to hear just some of your priorities in this context as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to echo what has been said, we have to meet the student where the student is, and then take the student where the student needs to go. And so some of that is determined by the student, and some of that certainly is determined by the economic marketplace. And so it's incumbent on us as the leaders of higher education to provide those wraparound services that are needed, to provide the time that might be needed, to provide the resources that might be needed. And so those are the things that we're focused on at the department, to say, what are the needs of the student? How can we facilitate those needs? How can we make sure that students are completing? And so what are the resources that are necessary, whether it's legislative or whether they're things that we can help to coax the universities to do as well, based on the research that we see across the country, to make sure that our students can be successful. I believe it's incumbent on us to create the conditions for them to be successful and provide the resources for them to then facilitate their own success. So that's where we're headed.
Fantastic. And Janine, building on what you just said and what Joe was just saying, last year we talked about you getting the designation of Hispanic Serving Institution. I think you have now been awarded it, so congratulations. I think that's great. How are you guys supporting these populations and helping to sort of bridge these opportunity gaps through your programs?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, we're proud to have achieved HSI status this year. It wasn't just an automatic thing. This was 10 years in the making. It was a deliberate strategy. When we look at the demographics across what's happening in Colorado and in the Denver Front Range region in particular, and you see the rising Latinx population. I talked a little bit about that sense of belonging. To have a school as large as MSU Denver in the heart of Denver that is actively labeled as an HSI is a huge thing for that community. And you hear it all the time, how much they feel like welcome. But it goes beyond that as well, because becoming an HSI means that it opens up some opportunity for us to get grants from the federal government, and also to partner with some companies. I didn't even realize that a lot of companies have programs that are targeted for minorities, and that they'll be able to partner with us more now that we're HSI. But the issue is that all the things that we can do because we're HSI and the kinds of grants that we can pull in help all of our students. And even in the process of trying to become HSI, we have all these work groups across the university working on what are the needs of this community. And you know what? They're the needs of a lot of our students. And so, you know, one of the biggest ones was, for instance, the HSI transfer student working group. And they have been working on, you know, all the ways to break down these barriers. It's astounding how many barriers that we're all in our own way on transfer students. But that will help all of our students as well. And so I think it's a really important step for the community and for the region.
Yeah, a word about HSI status. First, I want to commend Metro State because they set out very deliberately years ago to say we want to be an HSI. But I would ask why every institution in our state isn't an HSI when you look at our high school demographics. Frankly, every single institution in our state ought to be one. And we shouldn't be just about, when we say Hispanic serving, we're really talking about meeting the federal standard of enrolling at least 25% of our students are Latino students. But it's not about enrolling them, it truly is about serving them. How do we make sure that they have the same success rates as our non-Latino populations? That's really critical, both for our for our Hispanic, African American, Native populations in particular. We are enrolling them at a higher rate. We're just not graduating them at the rates that we should.
I just want to acknowledge that President Cheryl Lovell is here from Adams State University, which is also a Hispanic serving institution. So thank you for being here as well.
Karen, you know, turning to CSU Global, a fully online program, I think first question, because on this note, how are you supporting your students in this space, particularly your diverse populations, in setting that sense of community for Janine?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question and something that we get asked a lot, that for us, I don't want to say it's common sense, but it's common sense. Online doesn't mean that it's remote, right? You're accessing your content remote, but we have amazing tools and technologies that meet students exactly where they are to help them get where they need to be. And to the point of wraparound services, you know, we know what students come to us at what risk based off of all kinds of data, including GPA, transfer credit, previous institution, how long it's been since they were in and out of school last, and we really specifically target those wraparound services based off of their needs, along with communicating with them about what we think their needs might be. So just because you might come in and look like you're a certain risk level or not, that doesn't mean that that's an accurate picture. So we do very proactive degree planning where we meet with our students right when they start and help them understand, you know, in the context of a lot of the things that we're doing at the State 15 to Finish, the momentum year, all of these things, while they may not fit, to your point, a working adult student exactly, those concepts can be applied to that student population by engaging them in a conversation to say, what is your goal? How long do you want to finish? What's realistic? How can we help fit this into your schedule? What do you need from us? Because we have our professional advising staff. You know, we're very focused again on the cost piece, so our financial advising model is very different than, you know, a first-time first-year freshman on a very traditional campus, because a lot of our students already come to us with some level of debt based on their past experience. So we sit down with them and truly explain, this is the cost of the total degree, this is how much you might be eligible for in aid. Can we talk about employer reimbursement? And let's talk through the difference between what you're eligible to get and what you should actually take. And how do we fill that gap with other funding sources? Just because federal financial aid will give you $20,000 a semester, that does not mean you should take $20,000 a semester, and have those honest conversations with our students. And we're very blessed in the fact that we do get to work with students who are ready to finish. And so when they come to us primed like that, we can have those honest conversations and then really work with them on that advising plan to help them stay engaged. And I think another component too is the faculty model, and making sure that our faculty understand the needs of the adult student population, willing to engage in the classroom. Our faculty engage 5 out of 7 days a week, with one of those days being a weekend. And they turn around their grades and their feedback in 72 hours of submission, because those adult students are busy and they don't have time to wait a week or even 2 weeks to get that feedback because they need to move on to that next assignment because they have parents to take care of, children to take care of, and a life to live.
You know, just in the essence of time, I'm going to push on a little bit of what all of you have implied, which is the vast majority of your student populations are working learners. And so this is a state that is known now for career-connected learning and work-based learning and apprenticeships and all those things. And I would like to hear from each of you, sort of how are you supporting your working populations, either in the sense of career-connected learning, lifelong learning, incumbent employees. You know, how are you connecting your learners to work? Go ahead, Joe.
Well, that's one of our main goals. Of course, we are trying to prepare people for the workforce. We have a lot of career and tech ed programs. In each of those programs, we have business advisory councils who help tell us, well, what are the current skills these graduates will need in order to move directly into the workplace. We also provide customized training for employers. So they'll come to us and say, we need a particular kind of training. It may be not for college credit, but it will help people get a job very directly. And we are working with groups like CareerWise to make sure our students have more opportunities to get work-based learning while they're still being educated by us. I think that is key for all of our institutions because especially the institutions up here, the majority of our students are working. The majority of our students are not 18. The majority of our students are part-time. The majority of our students are first generation. That's a very different population than you see at CU or DU or School of Mines.
Yes. Same population. Same population. So since I got here, my number one focus is this experiential learning and launching people into careers that they value and also to be sort of robust and engaged, civic-minded leaders in the community as well. And so I think the best way to do that is to be actively engaged with the community. So the biggest initiative that we have, and we're in the process of setting up right now, is our Classroom to Career Hub. And I call it a hub because it needs to be externally. It shouldn't be so hard for employers to figure out how to connect to the university. And we know that it's hard. It's sort of like, well, I talked to this dean, and then I talked to this person, and this faculty member. And so we're trying to sort of make that smoother on our side. It's harder than it sounds, but that's what we're trying to do. So that's sort of a one-stop shop. And also to be able to link with employers. A lot of employers are sort of like, yeah, I kind of want to, I'd like some apprentices or an internship program, but they don't know how to do it, right? And so we have to partner actively to help them figure out ways that are win-wins for both the student and for the community partner and the business partner. So that's what the hub is designed to do. Internally, it's a robust wraparound career counseling, academic counseling ecosystem, right? The traditional model where you come in and you figure out what your degree is and then you get an academic counselor, we're trying to change that so that as soon as you come in, you get people talking to you about what your goals are, what your obstacles are, how to navigate financial aid, how to just navigate this whole thing called college and how that matches to finding your passion and your way. And so that's our focus. The model for this really, I can't take credit for, I just copied it, is what Dr. Jordan did with our Lockheed Martin partner where, you know, they with all the aerospace industry, brought them in and said, you know, what career skills are missing? You know, what are you, and they said, well, you know, we have these engineers at this level and we have, you know, vocational at this level, but manufacturing in our industry is becoming so much more complex. There's this whole other thing missing. And so with the community, with the industry partners, co-designed the curriculum that made sense. And you know what they said, and this was the counterintuitive piece, I think, for the faculty, they wanted those essential skills. I don't call them soft skills, I call them essential skills. They don't want to just graduate robots in the industry. They want people with critical thinking and ethics and all those sorts of things. And so those vegetables went back into the lasagna of the curriculum, and I think that's super, super important. And so we're trying to scale that across all the critical industries in Colorado, healthcare, banking, everything. So that's our approach.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to flip the question back and just ask who in the room learned everything they needed to know within the scope of the four walls called a classroom.
Oh, just
except Angie, the classroom and the ball court, right? So what we really try to do at CSU Global is look at this as a two-way street, right? We need industry to help us understand what our students need so that they can be successful in the workplace and learn how to engage in lifelong learning. And then recognizing learning where learning occurs. And often it's not within the scope of the four walls of the classroom or our virtual classroom, which has no walls. It's happening every day on the job. It's happening through apprenticeships. For us, it happens lots of times with students with internships. We recently launched micro internships, which is kind of a gig economy approach to the internship where our students can engage in project work in industry so that they're getting that very practical application of the theoretical skills. A lot of it is also in the assignment creation. A 5 to 7 page paper every week with 5 academic resources is probably not going to help you get into the job, right? But then taking that theoretical understanding and applying it in a relevant, practical-based assignment will. And then again, we have 1,800 affiliate partners, and we engage our affiliate partners in the program design. So we take our courses and our programs through revision a minimum of every 2 years. Some of our IT and cybersecurity go through every year. And we engage with industry experts and with our program advisory boards and our affiliate partners to review that content and tell us what's missing, because things changed in the last year, especially in so many of the fields. Like, there's nothing stagnant anymore. So getting that input, making sure we're reflecting that input, and then preparing students for the workforce, and then back to the career navigation and services, and then just continue with, and the other thing is understanding how to upskill and reskill with all of those changes. The degrees of yesterday may not be the degrees of tomorrow. So we've gone through, and at both the undergraduate and the graduate level, identified Title IV eligible certificates that are relevant and tied back to workplace skills and certificates, so that we're mapping those outcomes to that industry relatedness. But then students can come in and upskill in smaller chunks, in what we call stackable chunks, that can still lead towards degree completion. So if you have an accountant who is finding that there's a certain level of automation coming into their role, they can come in and get a certificate in business intelligence or business analytics or anything like that, just to upskill a little bit, but then they're that much more prepared for the master's degree if they decide to do that as well. So it's really creating those opportunities. We refer to it as pathways, and that might be because I'm afraid of heights and I don't want to get on a bridge. But you know, those pathways back and forth between higher education and industry and K-12 through concurrent enrollment and apprenticeships, so that it isn't this box that you're in and then you leave and then you have to go back into that we call higher education, that it's an open pathway back and forth as needed.
And I'm just going to, and I'll have you say it in this context, that, you know, in the essence of time, I'm going to ask each of you to make sort of 1 minute of final remarks. And the closing I'd like you to sort of focus on, given this audience, is, you know, we're not at ground zero in partnerships with industry anymore. You know, industry comes to the table, sort of tells what they need, and I think you can hear very clearly you have presidents and chancellors who are listening and responding. My question to you now is sort of, what's next? What do you need from industry to accelerate, deepen, expand these relationships to sort of change the systems in which you're working? So Angie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Wanted to just say that we have as policy prior learning assessments where we started with military. We said, if you have you've served in the military, what are some of the skills and competencies that you have gained, and how do we translate those into college credit? We're doing the same thing now with work-based learning, and what have you done prior to entering higher education that we could then say, how do these translate into college credit, so that you start not from zero, but you actually start with some acknowledgement that you have some prior learning. In addition, I think for the department, and certainly for me, I have a passion around high-quality collegiate apprenticeships. So we do a great job, I think, with K-12, with apprenticeships in high school, but I think we can do an even better job with apprenticeships when you're a junior or senior in college. Real high-quality apprenticeships for instance, in engineering, and really targeting underserved minority populations for those as well. Because I know I went to Stanford, I went there on a basketball scholarship, but when I got to Stanford, there were a lot of people who were well networked. I wasn't. I came from the South Bronx. Not a lot of networks there. And so my classmates, when they were graduating, they were getting jobs with Uncle Billy's firm and and the guy that was on the board of their parents, and they had so many social and economic networks that they were just fed right into with high-paying jobs. And most of the folks who were in my situation, you know, we just went out there and said, who will hire me, and tried to apply, and we didn't have those networks. And so I think the apprenticeships can serve in that way. So I think we have to be very deliberate, intentional, and really strategic about how we develop those. And then also the industry institution partnerships. I think we can do that even better. My last job of consulting with industries for the last 12 years, I've seen it work really well in other countries and in other states. And so I'm really determined to make sure that we are doing as best as we can in developing those, expanding those, and making sure that the students have access to all of those kinds of partnerships.
Real quick.
I think when I think about, you know, what's next and how do we continue to impact the system, a lot of it is just continue to engage. We are here to serve the state of Colorado. We want to serve students across, you know, all 50 territories, regardless of minority status, non-minority status. The opportunity to access higher education is huge. I'm a non-traditional student myself, and I finished my bachelor's degree while I was still on active duty, and the impact that finishing that had on my career trajectory is huge. But that came with an engagement level. So we're not at ground zero. I think we are all very open. We all want to serve. We reach out to you. Continue to challenge us. Continue to say it's not good enough. Preferably kindly, and with some clear expectations that we can meet, or you know, that we can try to meet. Because I think it's a conversation, and it's an ongoing conversation. And if higher education is not meeting your needs, then come to the table and let's have an honest conversation about it, and let's talk about what we can do. Because we can do a lot if we work together. We can't do so much if we're saying higher ed's not there for a career, we're there for these very high aspirational goals, which a lot of universities are. And I think that's the other thing too, is to really understand the mission of the individual universities in which you're engaging. We all serve non-traditional students. We all have unique missions. CU has a unique mission. The land-grant institutions have a unique mission. So if you have a specific need that's not being met, let's talk about that. And if it's not within our scope or within our missions, let's talk about who can meet that need and who can serve that need, because all of Colorado will benefit if all of the institutions and all of the employers can work together on this.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we're all different, and if I were a business leader, there would be things I would be partnering with CU on for research at higher levels in the health industries or everything. The people up here on the stage today, we're very much in that sort of talent pipeline niche, and that's where I'm going to stay. You know, what I would say to the business leaders in this room is I know you're parents. You are parents of students, and they have a certain model, like I opened with, but you're also employers, and recognizing what we're talking about today, about the experience of the vast majority of the workforce here in Colorado, and helping partnering with us to create those unique pathways. The biggest thing, sort of tactically, that you can do is pay our students for these internships and these apprenticeships. It's an investment in your workforce. Try before you buy, you know, and be actively engaged in crafting interesting experience. I mean, don't just bring them in to make coffee, man. We'll help you figure it out. And that's where it's really, really going to happen. And I would say, you know, this is really important because the students that we're talking about, and Angie, you alluded to this, there are literally people breaking the law and risking jail and spending $500,000 to get their kids into certain schools with certain names. Why are they doing that? I will tell you, it's not because of the experience in the classroom. I've taught at big name schools, and I've taught at super expensive liberal arts schools, and I will tell you the quality of the day-to-day education on my campus and yours is astounding. Our faculty are there because they love to teach and they love to engage with students. It's great. But the reason these parents are risking jail time is not because of that. It's because of who they're going to meet and who they're going to marry. But it's the network. So let's create that network for our students. Okay? So if they don't have the parents that are going to get them the Gucci internship, you know, we can do this for them if we partner.
Thanks. We value our partnerships with business. But what I ask is, I want you to value our students. Most people look at community college students and community college generally as a place for the no-hopers, the kids who couldn't make it somewhere else. You would be amazed at the quality of the students who come out of our institutions. They do very well. Andy Dorsey was telling me about a student he heard from recently, a graduate of Front Range, who's finishing his work at MIT. People don't assume that's what our students are doing. So value our students. Would ask you don't have to raise your hands, how many of you would choose to send your own kids to a community college? How many of you would hire a community college graduate over a four-year graduate, even if they had the skills that better suited them for the jobs that you needed to fill? We need to start looking at these community college students as students with real potential and real ability. We cannot close the equity gaps that we have. We cannot meet our economic goals if we are not taking better advantage of those students. So let's think for a second about what's the real goal of higher education. It really isn't about winning football games, although good luck with that, Bruce. It is about improving lives. And it is about breaking down barriers based on class and race and gender and geography. And in fact, you could look at higher education now and make the argument that it reinforces those barriers, that it doesn't break them down. That's what we need to change, and we need your help in changing it.
I don't know about you, but this is one of the most inspiring panels that I've been a part of. I mean, these four individuals, between quality, diversity, improving lives, going to your students, valuing these students, creating networks, being willing to listen and change. I mean, you are hearing from leaders from higher ed who want you to come to the table, want to be partners, and want to create opportunity for students all across Colorado and the nation. And you're hearing it from them. And I think this is an opportunity to work together under Angie's leadership to really create sort of large-scale change. So thank you so much for this panel and this opportunity. Hand it over to Jeff.
So we're going to do some final comments just to wrap up today. First and foremost to our sponsors, and they're on the back of your program. In interest of time, I do want to obviously reference our title sponsor, TIAA, again, not only for your sponsorship of the event, but the sponsorship of the report of findings. Thank you for that. It's an incredible report. I hope you find great value in that. And to our other sponsors as well, thank you. We have a lot of events. We talked about engaging with us. Those of you that would like to partner and sponsor with the Roundtable, please make sure you connect with Lisa. To our panelists, an unbelievable job. And Debbie, I think you're right. That was an inspiring time today, time well spent. I'd like to bring Bruce and Kevin back up for another hour and let them go. That was an amazing time. Bruce, thank you for what you do. Buy some papers. Kevin will be happy. They'll probably want to stay in Denver, so thank you for that. How many of you have put on an event before? Raise your hand if you put an event together. How many months, and I want you to actually yell out to me, how many months would you like to have to plan a signature type event like this? 6 months. Okay. Ready for this? We're doing the state of the state with Governor Polis in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So don't leave without buying a ticket or getting ready for that. Don't leave without sponsoring that event. Tell your friends, neighbors, we're in a full-scale, kind of in a pitch to get everybody involved with that, to present, to get that word out to everybody. Governor Polis really wanted to partner with the Roundtable on that state of the state. It'll be at the DU campus at the Cable Center, another lunch event. We've got some great partners lined up, Civico and others that'll be involved in that. Those are the types of things we're doing. We've got a public lands event. We've got an energy and environment coming up. We've got a great view from the top that we do with the Denver Business Journal every year. Thank you. Thank you for engaging with us. To our panel, to our presenters, and most importantly to our sponsors, thank you for all you do. And to the Cobert team, you guys are the best. Thank you.